We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It is Wednesday when you're listening to this. However, we're recording Tuesday night. I have Eric with me, and I'm very glad Eric is with me. There's so many silly, stupid, blatant things going on. It's hard to decide where to go to at first, but I have a feeling, at least with Eric, we'll be able to go through most of those things and get specific terms defined in these things so people truly understand what's going on as opposed to the bullshit you hear from the mainstream media. I said this to somebody before, Eric. It's one thing, the bad news, the evil news, but it's really becoming very tiring hearing all the ridiculous, seemingly silly news. And it would be laughable if it didn't hurt so many people. But some of the lies, some of the bullshit are so blatant, so stupid. I just don't get how people are still trying to support it.
Well, thanks for having me. I love being back on the show. I love the fact that a lot of people like what I have to say and take comfort in the details I give them. But you're right, it is so laughable. It is so much bullshit. It is so blatantly illegal that, like, how do they defend it? But they feel like they have to because it's their guy. Some people don't want to be wrong. They feel backed into a corner about being wrong. So they double and triple down because they have to be right about their guy. Some of it is, in the case of MAGA and some of these Republicans, simply put, Fox News and other places don't tell them everything. They just
No, it's
don't
true.
know. They're uninformed. But then you got the politicians who should know better that are they're backing him, and I talk about it a lot, but it's a math question for them. And they're saying, okay, can we win on reelection based on what's going on? As long as we keep that 30% of their base, of the MAGA base that won't vote if we piss them off about Donald Trump? Or do we need to piss off that 30% to get reelected? And they haven't figured out yet that they need to walk away from that 30%. And it's going to come and bite them in the ass at some point. It is just a matter of when.
Well, yeah, the most troubling thing about this is we had so many things going on, like the shutdown. The shutdown is absolutely stupid. The Republicans are trying to avoid making decisions on things where they know the right decision, but because Donald Trump suggests something different, they don't have the courage to do it. First and foremost, the Jeffrey Epstein situation. If they come back into session, then they have to take the vote on the discharge petition, and then there'll be a vote as to whether they should release the Epstein files. And then there's the shutdown, the financial aspect of it. I have a feeling that the Democrats at this point would settle for just keeping the ACA subsidies where they've been all along for 10 or 12 years or whatever. But Donald Trump, at this point, all he wants is a win. Donald Trump is great at making demands and then making somebody else responsible for it and then blaming them when it doesn't work. Perfect example. Well, I'm going to have Pete Hegseth pull together a bunch of money and we're going to pay the military. We're going to pay our military people because he knows that's a big point with a lot of people. A lot of people are pissed off about it. So today is October 15th when you're listening to it. It is payday. Does the military get paid today? I highly doubt it because it would have taken longer to put this whole thing together. So what does Donald Trump do? He'll say, well, I told him to do it. It's Pete Hegseth, and he'll put him under the bus. And the same thing with the shutdown. We're dealing with people really in troubling situations with this shutdown. It's an easy fix. I suspect most Republicans in Congress, in the House and Senate, would easily vote to maintain the subsidies with the ACA. We're not asking for more money. We're just talking about keeping it the same way it's been for a long time. They want to do this. They know how damaging it's going to be to their constituents and how it's going to damage their election. But because Donald Trump doesn't want to back down yet, and he's got nothing to lose personally, they refuse to push back. That's got to come to an end at some point. I mean, these people are essentially committing political suicide if they haven't already.
Yeah, I don't know if that the military gets paid today. Um, because like you said, today is payday. I don't know that legally they can actually pull this money together and do it. And in fact, I would argue that they can't legally do it in part because of something Mike Johnson said. I
Right.
don't know if you saw these comments by Mike Johnson, but he was talking to reporters and he basically dared Democrats to sue Donald Trump to prevent him from paying the military out of these other funds because it's not legal. And he basically said, well, the president has the ability to move the money around despite what we've passed through Congress. And I dare you to sue him to try to say it's not legal what he's trying to do here. All they want is for the Democrats to sue to say, to come back out with sound bites of saying, see, the Democrats don't want the military to get paid. And that's not the case. They just want Donald Trump to follow the law. But also, I think Pete Hegseth is going to be the fall guy here. Now, Pete
Oh, no
Hegseth has
question.
done nothing but embarrass Donald Trump week in and week out. Since he's gotten nominated, he goes out, looks like a jackass in front of all of the generals. In fact, called the meeting without telling Donald Trump initially. He didn't know what was going on until a couple of days before, and then had to make it all about him. And then Donald Trump embarrasses himself at the meeting. I'm sure he blames Hegseth for even calling it in the first place as to why Donald Trump would have gotten embarrassed. Um, this whole thing is going to land at the feet of Hegseth. And I guarantee you, there are Republicans in Congress who, if Mike Johnson would call the House back, would be willing to vote on a bill to fund the military and say, okay, we're going to keep them fully funded until we figure the rest of the shutdown out. But he won't call them back because he hasn't been given permission by Donald Trump to talk and negotiate. I believe he said that in an interview that he didn't have permission yet to negotiate with Democrats. Well, since when did the Speaker of the House, who is supposed to be co equal to the president as a co equal branch, need the president's permission to do a damn thing? It's just
That's
because
a,
Mike Johnson is weak.
yeah, he's incredibly weak. And I have a feeling that Mike Johnson isn't going to be the Speaker of the House after some of this stuff shakes out. Um, it's Donald Trump is putting pressure on these people. He doesn't care about the impact to everybody else. He doesn't care. I mean, he can give the military the money. That doesn't fix it. I mean, great. I hope he does get the money to the military. And I would say this to the Democrats. If Mike Johnson is saying, well, if he just moves it around and gives it to the military, and then the Democrats will sue and will show you that they don't like the military, I think in this situation, the Democrats call the bluff. Don't sue. People will say, well, it's a lot of money. So what? We're fucking buried under bullshit right now. If Donald Trump chooses to do something, chances are down the road it will cause a bigger fuck up. So just let him. They
Well,
want they want Democrats to sue him, and I think they should not sue him. And people say, well, it's a fucking big mess already. Let's let them crash and burn. Let them do what the fuck they want, and let them pay for the price by way of what the constituents feel when it's all said and done.
well, yeah, exactly. And beyond that, there's now a precedent going to be set. If they don't sue Donald Trump and he's allowed to move this research and development money over to temporarily pay the military, okay? Next time there's money left over in one project, but not enough for another that Congress didn't approve, and a Democrat's in charge, that Democrat can do the same damn thing. And what
Yeah,
are the Republicans going to say? Well, you can't legally do that. And maybe they win on a lawsuit. But they've also set the precedent of, well, Congress didn't push back the last time it was done, and they can point at it. It becomes slippery. But see, this is where Republicans fuck up all the time. They don't care anymore about the future. They're looking at now. They're looking
right.
at 5 minutes from now. They're not looking at the midterms. They're not looking at 2028 yet, saying, shit, we got to do something. We got to fix this bullshit. We can't let him get away with it. So they're letting Donald Trump do all of this bullshit and they're hurting their own brand in the process, and they're too stupid to realize it.
Well, exactly. And I think at this point, when we're talking about things in Congress, we don't help them. We don't vote to open up the government, giving them whatever they want. But I'm saying just don't push back at all. Let them do exactly what they want because they're going to do it anyway and they're going to fail miserably. So the faster they do this, hopefully they fail more miserably more quicker. Um, we've tried this pushback for 10 years and it works, but we go through a long process and a lot of people suffer over it. I'm almost at the point where I want to get this over with and get it done so we can get back on track. And the longer we do what we're doing, the longer it's going to take to get it done. It sounds like a fatalistic attitude. It's more a strategic attitude because we know when it comes to Congress and we're pushing back, and this shutdown is 2 weeks now. It could go a month, it could go 2 months. I've said this before too, if I'm the Democrats, they're trying to pull out every stop to get us to bend their way. If I'm the Democrats, I say we're not bending under any circumstances. If we have to keep this fucking shutdown until the midterms, we'll do it because they're the ones paying the price. They're saying Democrats are at fault, but they know better. They're taking the slings and arrows. So let the fuckers take it until they own up to it.
Yeah, I mean, that's not a bad plan. I mean, I think Democrats probably do have an idea of the minimum they would accept in this deal. You know, if the Republicans came out and said, hey, we'll give you 6 years of Affordable Care Act subsidies, and we'll give you 50% of the Medicare cuts back. I think Democrats might jump on that. They might
Oh,
take
yeah.
it, but they're not even getting that. The only offer they've really gotten was by somebody who couldn't actually bring it to the floor for a vote because Mike Johnson said, no, we're not going to vote on that. I think was 1 year of Affordable Care Act subsidies, and that was it. And I don't think Democrats would have taken that. But there hasn't been any negotiation. Typical negotiations would go like this. Democrats say, okay, we want permanent extensions of the subsidies and we want all the money from Medicaid returned. Then Republicans would come back and say, we'll give you 2 years of subsidies and 10% returned. Democrats would come back and say 20 years of subsidies and 70% or 75%. And they'd go back and forth and they'd meet in the middle somewhere. But there are
Right.
no negotiations happening. All the Republicans keep doing in the Senate is they keep bringing up the exact same bill from the House that hasn't passed. And I did a video on it yet. Well, what would be yesterday as you're hearing this? Uh, it passed or it failed yesterday 49 to 45. They didn't even get to 50% where JD Vance could have been the tie breaking vote if they nuked the filibuster. And if it wasn't for I think it was one independent and one Democrat, they would have only had 47 votes. They can't
Right.
even get, they couldn't even kill the filibuster right now and open the government. It just shows how ineffective their leadership is. They should be doing negotiations, but they think they're winning the messaging war, and they're not.
No, they're definitely not. And just so people understand, when Eric's talking about the filibuster, in order to pass any deal in the Senate like this, it has to be there has to be 60 votes for the bill. It has to be 60 votes, which makes it tough because we've got such an even split between Democrats and Republicans. In order to pass something like this, they need Democrats to vote their way, which isn't going to happen under these circumstances. Now, the thing about it is the filibuster. This is an interesting situation. They've threatened to go nuclear on the filibuster and essentially get rid of the filibuster, right? Now, if
Yes.
they did that, they would pass this bill and it would be devastating for people for the time being. But if they did away with the filibuster and things continue to go to shit when the Democrats take over, we can start fixing things real fucking quick.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why one of the reasons why I have said Republicans are not going to nuke the filibuster because every time they do, they end up getting bit in the ass. They know they're ultimately going to end up as a minority party in the Senate. Now, it may not be in 26, it may be 28
Right.
before they end up the minority party. And while I don't think it would take that long, hell, it might take to 32. But at some point, they're going to be the minority again. They just
Right.
will. And they want to use the filibuster to prevent Democrats from pushing through a bunch of stuff they disagree with. The filibuster has always been a minority tool to prevent the majority from just barely having a majority and running roughshod over the other party. Um, and Republicans hate it when it gets used against them. And they know they now some people have suggested maybe they change the rules and change it back. They could do that. But again, once you start doing that quick change of rules to pass one thing, change it back, etc., you're giving Democrats the green light to do the same thing, whether or not the Democrats would do it. And then now you've got a whole new problem.
Well, if Republicans do the things they want to do, and you're saying if it's a quick change back to take it away and then put it back, and the Republicans would try to play that game, I understand that. And I also understand that you're suggesting, well, the Democrats may not do that because they're a little better human beings than the Republicans. However, if the Republicans continue to do the things they have done and continue to do, when the Democrats get into control, whether it's distasteful to them or not, they almost have to do it to fix the horrendous problems that the Republicans committed or created. So I'm sure the Republicans are thinking about this. The important people have to understand is the people that don't like the filibuster isn't just Republicans. Now, when the Democrats had the control of the House, they hated the filibuster, or the Senate. They hated the filibuster. Now that they don't, they love the filibuster. And both sides are terrified of getting rid of it because they know at some point they're going to get their asses kicked by it. For me personally, I've always said this. I think we should get rid of the filibuster, take your ass kicking, get it back, and gives you more motivation to hold on to it and then do some good work. The filibuster is nothing more than a tool to get nothing done. And that's
Yeah,
contrary to what the Congress is supposed to do.
yeah, but we've also changed how the filibuster works in
Right.
modern times. It used to be that, a filibuster was more of a, okay, I'm going to go up and I'm going to talk, and I'm going to talk and talk, talk and talk until I can talk no more, and then you can still vote around me. Now it's just, well, we don't have the 60 votes, so it's filibustered. The senators themselves have taken the easy way out with this.
Yeah.
It's a convenient way to not do lots of debate, to not do a lot of voting on things if they know it's not going to pass that 60 vote. And neither side wants to see it gone. Getting rid of it might help. Um, but I mean, the first carve outs were done by Republicans, and I think that would start getting through judges.
Yeah. Well, I thought, personally, I think, and again, it has downsides to it too. But if you don't like the downsides, keep voting in the people that you support. But I think getting rid of the filibuster, regardless who's in power, whether it be the Republicans or Democrats, I think getting rid of the filibuster is beneficial to this country and uh, to the governmental process because we end up going through spending a lot of time and money and not getting anything done. You might get some things done that you don't like when somebody you don't like is in power, but it's a simple fix. Just get out and fucking vote and make sure your side is in control. And if they keep doing things that are good for the country, presumably they're going to be hard to get out of there. And I think that's what the filibuster does. A filibuster hides a lot of failures by both parties. It's kind of like what I was talking about Donald Trump. Oh, you want to shut down the country for a month or 2 months? Okay, go ahead and do it because the results are going to be devastating and they're going to be blaming the Republicans. If you don't have the filibuster, and you go through and you're cheering about passing some bill, but it fucks things up, then you have to pay the price for it. If you put something through without the filibuster and it's beneficial, presumably you should get reelected. It causes these people, it creates more of a meritocracy amongst representatives as opposed to just bullshit where I didn't vote for it, but now I'm taking credit for it. That sort of thing. Make these fuckers own up with everything they vote for. And if they fail, they take the beating. If they win, they get reelected.
Yeah, I mean that wouldn't be a bad strategy if that did work as intended. I mean the big problem with it right now, like you said, it hides a lot of things because it just doesn't get passed. So Republicans can say, well, yeah, we couldn't fund the government because of the filibuster, and they blame the Democrats.
Right.
But then again, if it did pass without the filibuster and it fucked everything up, Republicans have no one to blame themselves. I do like the fact that it does give the minority power a little bit of leverage, like what we're using right here, to get things done. Otherwise, these Affordable Care Act subsidies would be gone. And I
Right.
know why Republicans are trying to do it. They're trying to end the subsidies. They're trying to cut a bunch of it because for going on now 12 years they've been trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act, but
Right.
it's gotten popular. There is a whole group of adults who have never uh, known what it was like before the Affordable Care Act.
Right.
That they turned 18 after it was put in place. They don't remember what it was like to live in that world. So it's popular because it's now getting effective. So they get rid of the subsidies, and now there's no money. That it fails because everything's way more expensive. People aren't getting insurance. People are pissed off because it's not working as intended because they broke it. And they can say, well, see, the Affordable Care Act doesn't work anyway. Now we can get rid of it without a plan to replace it because, well, it was just broken anyway.
When they wanted to shut down the Affordable Care Act prior to it becoming law, I could understand what they were doing there. But they've got a problem in this situation. I would hope Republicans in Congress understand. Once you've given people the benefit, it's one thing to not give somebody a benefit that they've never had. But once you take away a benefit that they become accustomed to and budgeted for, once you take it away from them, it's going to be devastating to a lot of people. And how Republicans in Congress don't think this is going to impact their election. And this is why I think there are Republicans that know better. It's just that they're terrified of Donald Trump and Donald Trump doesn't care. So they're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, either piss off Donald Trump or not get reelected. Because I guarantee you, if people are out there losing their health care or it goes up 3 or 4 times, people are going to be pissed because they had it one way and now they have it this way, and there's only one group of people to blame for it. It's stupid to even do this because you're going to get you're going to take a beating. There's just no question about it.
Yeah, you're right there. And they don't realize how bad it's going to be when it goes away. Now that people are used to it, and if they were to somehow be able to repeal the Affordable Care Act and let it go back to how things were, where there wasn't the healthcare exchanges, where there wasn't, where now if you need insurance and you don't have a job that provides it, you can go to the exchange, you can get put into a pool with 100,000 other people, and you can get relatively affordable insurance plus the government subsidy to make it affordable enough. Before, you would have to go down to your local insurance agent, find a plan for you or your family or whatever of 3 or 4 people, and that would have to be your coverage. Your premiums were through the roof, and it was horrible.
Yeah.
My dad worked for a small company, and when I say small, I think there was at most, I think 8 employees, but they
Right.
provided health care. This was
Right.
before the Affordable Care Act. And just to cover like himself through that plan was really expensive back then. And I remember talking to him after my insurance the first time through a job. We were talking about premiums. My premium was a fraction of what he was paying because I was in with a a company with 60,000 employees,
Right.
and I got into a huge pool. Now with the Affordable Care Act, people can get in, like my dad would have been able to go to the Affordable Care Act panel and get insurance that way and get a decent plan and not have to pay that expensive policy. And then you add in all of the other changes from the Affordable Care Act to how insurance worked, and you go back to what it was like before, and people are going to be pissed because it was the wild, wild west when it came to health insurance and what they wouldn't cover and how things worked. For those of us old enough to remember, there are young people who would never believe how bad it really was.
Oh no. I mean, there was periods of time when I was young that I didn't have health insurance because I just couldn't afford it. Just absolutely couldn't afford it. But you said something interesting there. You said that when your father worked for a company that had 8 people, they had health care, but it was really expensive. Then he said, if you when you work for somebody with 60,000 people, it was a fraction of what he was paying. That's interesting. So you're saying that more people together get you cheaper health insurance, which would be a good
Mm-hmm.
argument for single payer insurance. The thing that
Yes.
everybody says, oh, we can't do that. If everybody's on a single payer insurance, it's going to be cheaper, obviously. And I would think Republicans who understand the free market could grasp that. The problem is they're being funded by other insurance companies and everybody, and they don't want that. Not because it's not better, not because it's not cheaper for us, because it will cost them money and put some people out of business. Well, they've been grifting long enough. It's about time we put some of these fucks out of business.
Yeah. Talking about single payer insurance, we were discussing that on one of my lives this past week. I've done several this week, more than I have in quite a while, but we were discussing universal health care. And one of the problems that Democrats have with universal health care is a typical Democrat problem, and that's messaging. They are horrible at messaging. They always have been.
Right.
But the Republicans have keep spinning this narrative that, oh, well, universal health care is free. Well, it's not free. Somebody pays. The
Right.
government pays. You paid for it through your taxes. The doctor still gets paid. The nurse helping the doctor still gets paid. All of that, they still get money. But there is a set payment for services rendered. So you go to any doctor and they get one payment. Let's say they get $100 for an office call, 200 for a specialist. I don't know. I'm throwing numbers out there.
Right.
And doesn't matter what doctor you go see, what specialist you go see. That's what they get paid when the government pays them because you went to go see them. Now, as it sits with everybody having different insurance, you might go to the doctor. They might start charging you 175, and after your plan works its magic, you pay your deductible or your copay or whatever you have at the doctor's office, and they do their deductions. That doctor might make $125 off of Mike. I go see the same doctor. He might make 135. It's so different. That's where the change comes in. They set standards of payment, and there wouldn't be one of the other arguments people have against it is, well, the government would be involved in making health decisions. No, it would just be administrative. They would make the payment. That's it. And then there wouldn't be this issue we have right now with insurance of, if you wrote the law the correct way, there shouldn't be any prior authorization needs. There shouldn't need to be referrals. There shouldn't need to be all of these things to go see whatever doctor you need to go see. An ex-girlfriend of mine, she had a son, has a son, who was on a med, a long-term behavior med. And he'd been on it for like 3 years at that point, by the time I met her. About every 4 to 6 months, she'd go refill this script for this med that her son had been on for years at this point, and there'd be a note from the insurance company, we can't refill that, you need to re-see your doctor, we need a prior authorization. So she'd have to call, get an appointment set. Well, sometimes they couldn't even get an appointment. The doctor would just fax in the paperwork or whatever, email the paperwork over, but it would still take 2 or 3 days of back and forth between the doctor and the insurance and the pharmacist to get your med. With single payer, universal health care, your doctor would write you the script, you'd go to the pharmacy, you would get the script, you'd go about your day. It would
Right.
be the end of it. It wouldn't be 100 questions of, well, did you try X, Y, and Z first? How long ago did you try it? Did you try it again recently? All of that bullshit would be gone.
Well, one of the things that Bernie Sanders suggested was Medicare for all. Now, I can speak from experience here. I'm on Medicare. I'd paid for health insurance for a long time, but now I'm on Medicare. And it's pretty easy. Once you're in the system, it's all pretty easy. I don't get it free. I do have to pay a certain amount every month, like $178 or something like that, and more if I want other additions to it. But it seems to work just fine. In fact, it works very well in all the clinics I've ever gone to with Medicare. It seems to me that somebody telling me that single payer or universal health care won't work, all you have to do is look at Medicare and it's working fine. It's not a problem, in spite of the fact that they want to make cuts. Um, when they start making cuts, direct cuts to Medicare, there's going to be a lot of people that are upset. But just doing what they're doing now with Medicaid, uh, this is going to cause quite a stir in this country. There are going to be people who can't get the health care they need. And it won't just be the old sick people that'll be angry. It'll be the young people that have to protect and support the old people that need the medicine, can't afford it. So their kids and grandkids are going to have to decide, can we afford it and do we do it? This is going to affect everybody across the board. And I cannot believe the Republicans in the House and the Senate don't see this. They're so afraid of Donald Trump, they're willing to piss off virtually all their constituents. And if you don't think they are, all you have to do is watch a town hall meeting. They all hate these motherfuckers. And these are the people they're counting on for votes.
Well, look at what happened to our soon to be former senator here in the state of Iowa, Joni Ernst. She
Yeah,
goes to the
exactly.
town hall, has one of her constituents say, "Hey, I depend on my Medicaid to live. We're going to die if you do these cuts." And her answer was, "Well, we're all going to die someday."
Right.
I mean, some of them don't care because it won't affect them because they're on, the brilliant government insurance that covers them at 100%. They don't know what it's like anymore because they have such good health care. Um,
Which is
some of
single
them,
payer, by the way.
right, right. That's the
Ironic.
universal health care that we're talking about. And it would be great if my tax dollars went to paying for health care for everybody. Then that would be a good thing. The problem where it comes into is certain people in this country, they don't like this plan of, they think that their tax dollars should only go toward the things they approve of. Like they get a say in where that they should have a say in where their tax money goes. Hate to break it to them. Once the government has it, it's no longer your money. It's the government's money. They get to do with it as they see fit. You just need to vote for the people that, you know, align with where you want the money spent. But you hear that all the time from people. I don't want my tax dollars going toward X, Y, or Z. Sorry, once the government has it, it's not your money anymore.
Well, and a good example of that is if you think the Republicans are protecting your money, if you think they're protecting your tax dollars, please take note of the fact that Donald Trump just sent $20 billion or is going to send 20 $20 billion to Argentina to some radical right fucking dictator to be elected there. And Pete Hegseth has been directed to try to pull together $8 billion out of somewhere in the Pentagon to pay the military who should be being paid anyway if they'd open up the government. You don't like what's going on with your tax dollars? Take a look at the Republicans. Where's that fucking money going? Where are we sending the money? It doesn't seem to bother you at this point, but it certainly will. That's why I'm saying if they just go ahead and do these things, it's going to come crashing down. If you take $8 billion out of the Defense Department to pay the military, then something's going to be missing money. regardless of what it is. And it will ultimately hurt the overall effort of the military or the 20 billion sent to Argentina. I mean, that's a good example. Donald Trump puts these tariffs on China. They stopped buying soybeans from America. I mean, they went from like 20, 30 billion to nothing now. That's devastating to the farmers, and they're now starting to feel it. China decides not to buy from the United States because of the bullshit tariffs, which is certainly their right. Donald Trump gets mad and says, I'm going to put more tariffs on. And then in the process, he gives Argentina $20 billion, who in turn lowers the price of their soybeans. And the soybeans we would have sold to them, now Argentina is. You're worried about your tax dollars. Look what's going on. Pay fucking attention. I think one of the reasons why with universal health care, the reason we don't have universal health care, and I think it comes down to this. Republicans have been very effective with their lies and carrying the narrative as to what goes on, and the Democrats have been horrible at it. If you look at the situation, you take a look at your own circumstances with regards to health care. If you listen specifically to what the Democrats said and what the Republicans are doing and saying, it's not a hard choice. Anybody with average or above intelligence would go with the Democratic thing. It makes more sense. But the Republicans have long been more effective of lying and getting people to buy it. And the Democrats have sat there with their thumbs up their asses and not really selling what the product they have. And I think that's the most frustrating thing.
Yeah, you're right there. As far as the soybean thing, though, one thing to consider, that 20 billion that China was paying, I believe was back up after Donald Trump wrecked the soybean market in 2017 or 2018 when he put tariffs on China the first time. And they went back, they cut way back on what they were buying. And it took Joe Biden 4 years to get China back up to the level they were buying. And now they're gone again. It's ridiculous. Now I don't know where the 20 billion he's sending to Argentina is coming from. As far as I know, that money was never approved by Congress anywhere. So I don't know what program he's using to fund that. This administration is just doing things and hoping there's no pushback.
And that's the thing is they can send $20 billion willy-nilly to some crazy dictator to get him elected down in Argentina. But we can't find the money to continue the subsidies to the ACA. As I've said before, they're not asking for more money for the ACA. They're asking just to keep it as it has been for several years. They've got the money to send to Argentina, but they don't have the money to help the people in this country to get health care. And really, at this point, the health care we have is a lot shittier than it should be, but that's not good enough for them. Let's make it even shittier yet. Donald Trump and the Republicans love to say America first. How is this whole scenario America first? Sounds like Argentina first.
Yeah, it does. I mean, you said we have shittier healthcare than what we really should have. I still remember one of my first policies I ever got as an adult on my own, where I had to pay for it and I had to, do all of the things. And it was something like, I think I paid $17 every 2 weeks or some bullshit like that. Next to nothing. I thought, well, that was cheap enough. I had a $450 deductible,
Yeah.
$25 copay. Sounded pretty good. And one of the last policies I had to get through a job, if I remember right, I was paying like $50 every 2 weeks with a $5,000 deductible and like a $45 copay. I mean,
Right.
I'm paying more, I'm getting less. Where's the benefit to me? I mean, if they got plans to fix the Affordable Care Act like they claim, let's fix it. But all they say is we have concept of plans and we have ideas, but they don't actually, their idea is to break it so it doesn't work and to get rid of it. I mean, if my insurance is already, $50 every 2 weeks, what's it going to be like when the Affordable Care Act goes away?
Well, where we are now with the shutdown It really is kind of a standoff. And the standoff is between the Democrats and Donald Trump. The Republicans are in the middle. They have to stick with Donald Trump for some unknown fucking reason. But I don't see the Democrats backing down after this. I mean, they've been known to back down and bend the knee just to do the right thing. But I think right now they're in for a penny, in for a pound. They've made this commitment to do this, and they would look horrible if they backed out. Saying what they're saying about how devastating it's going to be in healthcare, the Democrats have to stand strong in this situation. And I'm glad for once it looks like they're going to do that because that's what it takes when you're dealing with a bully. You need to stand up to them and push back. It's kind of like a game of chicken. Who's going to get hurt the worst? When we watch this, we know the Republicans are going to get hurt the worst in this situation. The Republicans know they're going to get hurt the worst, but because Donald Trump doesn't give a fuck, they're stuck now. They can't win for losing. If they do the right thing, then they have to deal with Donald Trump. If they do what Donald Trump wants, they have to deal with the constituents. If I'm laying this out in front of me and I'm the Republican Party, I'm at a point where I say, fuck you, Donald Trump. We're not doing this. We're not committing political suicide for your dumb ass.
Yeah, that's why I keep saying that behind the scenes, they're doing the math. And they're trying to figure out where that line is as far as getting through to the midterms is. Now, I think they are waiting till at least next year because voters seem to have a very short-term memory problem when it comes to voting and things like that because they forgot how bad the economy was during COVID under Donald Trump. And they tried to blame Joe Biden for all of the problems with COVID when he was the one who fixed most of the issues. Donald Trump fucked up his handling of COVID. And we're seeing how bad Donald Trump runs the economy now. So I think Republicans are trying to play this, but there is going to be a point when they go, I would rather deal with facing the little bit of your wrath and pleasing my constituents than dealing with pissing them off to please you. After the midterms, his political capital is basically gone. If he costs him the House and the Senate, we talk about it a lot, that he's got nothing left. He can't run for a reelection despite what they're saying. They're not going to be able to find a loophole. They may attempt some sort of thing to put him on a ballot, but I honestly don't think he's going to be healthy enough. I don't think he's going to be cognitive enough. Hell, I don't know if he'll be alive come 28 to be the Republican candidate.
I know a lot of us Democrats and independents and such are praying for the demise of Donald Trump in any way possible. But I'll guarantee you, given the position he's put them in right now, there's a lot of Republicans thinking, if this fucker just died, it would be so much easier. We wouldn't have to deal with this bullshit. I mean, he's got people on his own side wishing he'd go away because he's destroying their careers in politics. I mean, there are people that go to the town halls now that get their ass kicked. They have no hope of getting reelected. And if you're in the House of Representatives, you're up for a reelection every 2 years. So it's not like people will forget about this. Now, there are some off-year elections, governors and such throughout the country. And it sounds like the Democrats might do really well in these places. Do you think that's enough to get Republicans a little nervous leading up to the midterms?
Yeah, it might be. It might be enough. Virginia, I believe, has got a governor's race coming up.
Right. So
And
does New
now,
Jersey.
and New Jersey, but I think New Jersey currently has a Democratic governor.
Yeah.
Um, but now I don't know if is it Youngkin? Is he running for reelection in Virginia, or is it a different Republican?
That's a good question. I'll check here. Well, you have the mayorship too. You have the
The mayor of
um,
New York.
mayor of New York, and that doesn't look like it's going well for Andrew Cuomo or Sliwa, the Republican candidate. What a fucking joke of a candidate.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like it's going well for them either. And I think if they get their asses kicked in those three elections and maybe some others, and they continue to get their asses kicked in special elections, um, that might be an opening. Uh, Now, after Election Day, if they lose both Virginia and New Jersey for governor, some Republicans might say, okay, the writing on the wall is starting to turn. The math is shifting against us. We have to do what we can here. Um, and you could see some changes coming. Again, Republicans in Congress, well, politicians in general care about their own power typically above anything else. And right now, Republicans think attaching their wagon to Donald Trump is their best bet to maintain their power. The minute they start thinking he's an anchor and he's dragging them down, they're going to be detaching and trying to burn him down in the process. And if he is alive and mostly coherent and able to talk, he will burn the Republican Party down on his way out the door.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I'm looking at the information regarding the Virginia gubernatorial election. There are two candidates. The Democrat is Abigail Spanberger, and the Republican is Winsome Earl Sears, who is the current lieutenant governor. So Youngkin is not running, which
Okay.
doesn't surprise me. Now, Virginia has another. They say that Abigail Spanberger is winning, but it's tightening. I got to think that's not going to go well for the Republican. With this shutdown, there are tens of thousands of people who live in Virginia that are now not getting paid because of the Republican Party. And I think that's what's freaking people out about that particular election. The Republicans going to take a hit for that, no question.
Yeah, I think you're right. And when you take out, I think I could be wrong because I don't live in Virginia, but I am fairly certain the federal government is the largest employer in the state of Virginia
Yes.
on its own, you know. And you start dealing with that. Now, typically, government workers are supposed to be non-political as far as being out and talking politics. That doesn't mean they can't vote. And if they
Right.
have one party to blame for their current financial situation, you know they're going to show up and they're going to vote against the party that is fucking them over right now. And if they're reasonable and they see what's really happening and they know the Republicans aren't negotiating, they're not doing anything, they're not going to blame the Democrats. They're going to blame the Republicans. And this could be a landslide for the Democrats in Virginia.
Absolutely. And, with regards to that race in Virginia, it would be a big deal if a Democrat won that race. Um, and we have the shutdown and we have all the other bullshit that's going on. A lot of these people in Virginia count on Medicaid, they count on a lot of this stuff. This election isn't in 2026, it's in about 3 weeks. People aren't
Mm-hmm.
going to forget. They're solidifying their opinions now by what they're experiencing. So it's conceivable a Democrat could win the governorship in Virginia. A Democrat will probably win in New Jersey, and Mondami will probably win in New York City. This has got to send a message to the Republicans a little bit, especially if they get beat badly. If they get beat badly, this has got to cause them to be a little concerned and start to at least get the sense that the tide is turning some.
Yeah, I think the tide was already turning. I think if Joe Biden had ran the rest of that race, they might have had a chance. Democrats might have had a chance to lose 28. And that's not a knock on Kamala Harris by any means. It was just too late in the year for him to drop out. Or
Yeah.
if, like I have suggested before, um, if she would have, if he would have resigned completely and let her become president, I think she would have won that race. And I say that because I don't think the tide ever fully turned in Republicans' favor. I think the Democrats grasped defeat out of the jaws of victory in 24. It was never, the tide was never fully in Republicans' way. It was just Democrats fucked up that led us to this point. They made some bad choices, and going that route, the little bit of a shift is going to shift way back because the Republicans are proving what they always prove, and that is they don't know how to govern.
Right. And the 2024 election wasn't won by the Republicans because they ran such a great race. Donald Trump didn't get that many more votes than he did in 2020 when he lost. The real problem here was the complacency or the ignorance of Democrats who didn't come out to vote, because far fewer Democrats voted for Kamala Harris than voted for Joe Biden. So you really have to put the blame on the Democratic voters that just chose to sit on their fucking hands, and that's kind of what we're hoping for with the Republicans coming up in these off year elections and the midterms. There are people out there that are upset with the Republicans, but they still probably won't vote for the Democrats. But that's okay because they probably just won't vote at all, which is fine with me. Don't vote. That's like a vote for the Democrats at this point.
Yeah. And one of the things we talk about a lot on this program, and I say a lot in my videos and my lives, is that when voters turn out, Democrats win. There
Absolutely.
are far more Democrats than Republicans, typically, even in these deep red states. It's that things have been gerrymandered so bad, and Republicans have controlled the narrative for so long that they're convinced they can't win. I mean, I remember when Arkansas was blue.
Right.
I mean, I'm sure you do too.
Bill Clinton came from
Yeah,
Arkansas.
exactly. That's what I was going with. Bill Clinton, I think even after him, I think well, his entire term, I think Arkansas was blue or at least purple.
Yeah.
Um, you know, but then they were able to control the narrative, and now voters just don't turn out in some of these areas. If we turn out in numbers, Democrats win because Republicans can't win on policy. They don't have good policies anymore. They don't have good ideas anymore. I mean, we kind of had policies and stuff under George W. Bush. They weren't great, but they had a platform. We had policies when John McCain ran. He had at least policies and a platform that he could run on. Well, what happened when Donald Trump ran? They said, yeah, we're not going to run a platform anymore. We're just not.
Right.
And they haven't had a platform other than Make America Great Again, which isn't a platform, it's a slogan. They don't have
Well,
ideas.
and not having a platform should have cost them the election. This is
You
why I
would think.
blame the voters. I blame the voters even more than the Republicans, because the Republicans aren't even trying to hide their incompetency or their ignorance or their arrogance, and they're not even trying to hide it. They just spew rhetoric, and people jump on board. So this shutdown thing. How do you think this ultimately ends? It seems like a standoff here, and nobody's willing to budge. How does it
Um,
ultimately end? Do the Republicans finally give in because they're tired of Donald Trump undermining their careers, or do they stand strong and we just let the country fall apart?
I think ultimately the Republicans end up caving. They're going to have to do something um, because I think what might end up happening, Mike Johnson's running out of excuses not to bring the House back.
Yeah,
I mean, it's playing very weakly. He's getting pushback from the media. His own party is saying, "Hey, bring us back in for votes." Um, now we this is just a wild theory that I just had, but it's entirely possible that they bring the House back to try to force negotiations, etc. And before we end up with a new Speaker of the House, before we end up with a result to this government shutdown, they could end up ousting Mike Johnson because he hasn't led through it before they have a deal. That's possible. Or they come back, somebody in the House brings up, maybe behind the scenes, two or three Republicans work with enough Democrats to come up with a new CR, and they do what they're trying to do with the Epstein files, and they have a discharge petition and some kind of a deal to fund the government, let's say all of next year till September 30th of next year, or maybe even past the election of next year, because they're not going to want to deal with this in an election year.
right.
And maybe they give in 3 years of Affordable Care Act subsidies, just enough to get them past the midterms, and
Right.
they give back some of the money out of maybe even all the money to Medicaid, or they put maybe they don't even give back the money. They just say, well, we're going to delay the cuts till after the midterms by, till the beginning of 27 or some bullshit. Something like that would give them enough cover. I think ultimately there will be some kind of a deal coming out of the Republicans, and it may not include Mike Johnson as Speaker. I mean, it could, but I don't think, regardless of what happens, if they have to make a deal with Democrats and Republicans don't win this and they have to cave on any of it, I am almost certain he doesn't maintain his speakership.
I think Mike Johnson is on thin ice right at this point. He's been failing at every turn. He's been in interviews. He's nervous. He's not speaking straight. They say, "What's your strategy?" And his attitude is, "I don't have any strategy. I did what I was supposed to do and sent it to the Senate. They just need to pass it." Well, that's not how bills typically go. The or the House passes something, goes to the Senate, they change it, send it back to the House. The House either accepts it or changes it, and it goes back and forth. That's how bills are done. But Mike Johnson won't even let them on the House floor. I mean, not only aren't the Republicans there, they lock the fucking doors. So nobody
Yeah.
can go in there and do anything. And so Mike Johnson is probably on thin ice. No matter what he does here, he loses. You can see it in his face that and the way he talks, he's panicking beyond panicking. And the interesting thing is, though, if they do kick him out, who are they going to put in there? They have a hell of a time electing a Speaker of the House when they elected him. Uh, and that's going to cause more delays and more problems. They need to get a deal done with Mike there because we could get another 1 month delay with them trying to come up with some kind of Speaker of the House. The other issue is it's one thing to get Mike Johnson to bend and do something, but all these people are complicit with Donald Trump, and Donald Trump doesn't show any sign at all about willing to bend on what he wants. So as long as these people are still willing to support him, I mean, if the Republicans cut a deal, they're going to have to go against Donald Trump. And if that happens, then maybe we're at a breaking point. But will the Republicans go against Donald Trump? That's the big question. Up to now, they haven't.
Well, and that's one of the problems. But the thing with Donald Trump is he's an idiot and he doesn't read. So they could go against Donald Trump and pass something. And as long as the advisor that hands him the bill to sign tells him, yeah, we got your priorities in effect, the subsidies are gone and the Medicaid cuts are still there, everything's the way you want it, he'll sign it, you know. Or they tell him just, well, you sign this thing, you sign it as it is right now, and it's let's say it was the deal I said that they just kicked the subsidies out to 27 or 28 and they extended the cuts out a little bit. All the advisor has to say is, well, we extended these cuts because they're unpopular. You'll look like a winner for signing it. And then whoever, if there's a Democrat in office after you, they'll look like a loser for letting it happen. You just phrase it the right way. He'd sign it because that's
Oh,
all he
yeah.
cares about. He doesn't actually care about any of the issues. He only cares about which way he looks like the hero in this or the good guy, or if he looks tough or what have you. They phrase it the right way, he'll be happy, they'll be happy, he'll sign it, and we move on.
You're absolutely right that Donald Trump is easily manipulated, and he does tend to back down. We know they call him Taco. Trump always chickens out. So it would be conceivable that they could manipulate him and talk him out of it and get this thing done and move on. Question is, we're 2 weeks into this shutdown. We're 9 or 10 months into this term. Why haven't they fucking done it already? Why don't they see the writing on the wall? That's what amazes me.
Well, it's because, as we talked about, they still think that being connected to Trump is going to get them that 30 to 35% of the MAGA voter to show up to the polls. And they think that is what is going to save them in a reelection bid. They haven't decided to turn on him yet because they think it's politically better to be sided with him. And until they figure it out and they realize that he's actually an anchor, they're going to keep doing this stupid shit. You would
But
think they would have realized it by now, but the MAGAs don't, and Republicans don't elect the brightest people. I mean, they elected Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Well, exactly. And I'm not diminishing anything you said. You're absolutely right. But how stupid is that? I mean, if I'm driving a car 50 miles an hour toward a cliff, right? If I'm smart, I hit the brakes before I get to the cliff. But they aren't doing it. They just gun it more and they keep going. That is so fucking stupid. It's amazing to me that they can't see it yet. Uh, and they must see it. It's just that they're complete cowards as to what Donald Trump may or may not do. At some point, that break has to come. And I got to tell you, once the Republicans push back against Donald Trump, you think it's ugly in DC now, it's going to be uglier than hell. He doesn't care if the whole world's against him. He's the one that's right, and it's going to get fucking messy.
No, messy would be an improvement to how bad it's really going to be.
Yeah, probably.
It is going to be
Probably.
ugly if they turn on him and and Congress starts pushing back and they start doing this and they start doing that. They are going to end up having major problems. He is going to burn down everything. If they have to end up removing him, like we've talked about before, there is an entire possibility if he costs him the House and the Senate that they turn on him and they agree to impeach and remove to set JD Vance up to give JD Vance some kind of cover. And I had this thought as I was on my live, what would be last night as you're hearing this. I said, it's entirely possible that if they lose the House and the Senate in the midterms, there's a 2 month window where uh, Republicans would still have control before Democrats take over. That they could want to remove Donald Trump, put in JD Vance, knowing that JD Vance would get nothing done for 2 years. So
Right.
then they could run JD Vance on this campaign of, well, give him a full term because the Democrats blocked everything we tried to do. He couldn't implement any policies. And then they could use that as a springboard to try to retake Congress. And it sounds crazy, but they may do it. It's possible. I'm not sure how probable it is. I mean, I'm a rational person coming up with a strategy. Republicans don't typically think that rationally, at least not lately. We'll see if they actually pull something like that off.
Yeah. Well, you make a good point regarding the midterms. If they impeach Donald Trump prior to the 2026, let me see if I got this right. They impeach Donald Trump before 2026. Not that it's really going to make a difference, but in their minds, then JD Vance could only run for one more term. If they
Right.
do it after the 2026 midterms, he could run for two more terms. The break point is 2 years,
Kind of.
right? If you've been there
Well,
more than 2 years, you
yeah,
can only
the,
run one more term.
the breaking point would be January 20th of 27 when they would have to remove Donald Trump. Problem is, January 3rd, the new Congress takes over. So they
Right.
have to have all their business done, and everybody who got elected in the 26 midterms takes over. I am suggesting they could use that gap between the midterm elections, November of 26. I don't know the exact date off the top of my head. January 3rd, that 2 month window roughly, and say, okay, we got to kick this guy out, put JD Vance in now, even though the Democrats will be taking over on January 3rd. So that way, sure, he'll only get one term of his own, but maybe we can use that to give him coverage so he can blame all the ineffectiveness of government on Democrats. And then they can use it and say, well, give JD Vance a full term, bring us back into power in Congress. We'll get shit done this time.
Well, if that's their plan, it's a pretty sad plan because I don't see JD Vance having a chance of beating anybody, even with Peter Thiel's money, will come 2028 because he's part of the Trump administration and he's going to, as much as he might want to pawn it off onto the Democrats, it won't work. Now, I don't know if you've seen this on TikTok, but, and I'm kind of putting you on the spot here um, to explain something to the people. If you're scrolling on TikTok, there are some people who are running around saying that, Well, if they impeach Donald Trump, that means they get rid of the vice president and all the administrative staff, too. That's the deal. And the fact is, that's not true. That's not true at all. And have you heard that claim that some people are making on TikTok? And what do you know about it?
Well, I know where the claim comes from. In the section of the Constitution where it talks about impeachment, it talks about impeaching the president and remove, and it's not worded entirely correct in my mind about what they intended. And I don't have the exact phrasing memorized here, but it's something to the effect of upon impeachment and removal of the president, vice president, and his cabinet, or something like that. Upon impeachment and conviction, they get removed from office. And it's phrased weird. And there are people that are looking at it saying, well, if you impeach and remove the president, the vice president's gone too, and the cabinet's gone too. That's not the case. You have what it is saying is any of those people can be impeached and removed separately
Right.
for high crimes and misdemeanors. It's not a catch-all. But a lot of times when you remove a president, the cabinet members go too because they were his handpicked advisors. I guarantee you, if JD Vance becomes president, he would keep some of them on for a little bit and they would be gone. I don't see President JD Vance keeping RFK Jr. and Linda McMahon, for
No.
example. Maybe Rubio was fine. And I'm going to put this to bed yet again, because I know there's going to be people in the comments saying, well, if they remove Trump, JD Vance becomes president, and Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, becomes VP.
No.
No. What will happen, and we know this is what would happen because Nixon did it. What would happen is Donald Trump is gone upon successful impeachment or removal, or say he kicks the bucket or whatever. JD Vance becomes president. He appoints, and he would have to pick somebody relatively normal because it takes 2/3 of both chambers of Congress to approve whoever he picks, and that person becomes vice president. Now, going back to what I said about Nixon, and you remember this, I'm sure you can verify what I'm saying is right here. You had Nixon as president. Spiro Agnew gets criminal charges. He goes into courthouse, the VP, comes out of the courthouse as a private citizen. He resigned.
Right.
Then Nixon appoints Gerald Ford. Gerald Ford was not Speaker of the House.
No.
He was a moderate Republican who Nixon knew he could get enough support on to get through. And he got through with very little objection. And then Watergate happens, Nixon resigns, and Ford becomes president. Mike Johnson, unless he is the person picked by JD Vance, has no place in that anywhere other than maybe being a vote in Congress to approve the pick. And Mike Johnson would never get 2/3 of both chambers. A Marjorie
Right.
Taylor Greene would never get 2/3 of both chambers. I really don't know who he would pick, but he'd pick somebody. And then he would go through and he would start going through and gutting the cabinets, getting rid of people like Pete Hegseth and not Marjorie Taylor Greene, Linda McMahon, maybe Marco Rubio. All of those people would be gone and they'd be moving on. He would be setting up his own administration for however much time he's got left.
I brought up a scenario. Some people think it's a possibility. Some people think it's crazy. But crazy times call for crazy actions. Something happens to Donald Trump. He chokes on a Big Mac. Let's say he doesn't get uh, impeached, but he's no longer president for whatever reason. J.D. Vance becomes president. Now, J.D. Vance has the right to appoint somebody as vice president, but J.D. Vance is a weak motherfucker. He'll probably be pushed to pick somebody specific. Now, when Nixon picked Gerald Ford, he was a pretty benign representative. He was a Republican, but he was a rep, but he didn't make too much noise. The only thing he was known for at that point was being on the Warren Commission, and we know how kind of corrupt that was. So they picked him, and they picked him specifically because Nixon cut a deal with him. Basically cut the deal, says, I'm going to make you VP. I'm going to resign. You become the president, but you've got to pardon me. So he was kind of locked into having to do that. But what if the Republicans are trying to change the vibe of this whole Republican Party? Donald Trump, something happens. From my lips to God's ears, let's hope. And J.D. Vance becomes president. The Republicans pressure him to pick somebody relatively normal, um, whoever, the governor of Georgia or somebody like that, somebody they think is normal. Um, and they bring in this VP and say, listen, just chill out a little bit. We're going to try to bring this back down to earth. We're bringing you as a VP, but don't worry. JD Vance has done plenty of shit. We're going to impeach him quick, fast, in a hurry. You'll be the president, and maybe you can right this ship between now and 2028. That sounds crazy, but not crazy when you think about the crazy shit we've already seen.
You're right. It sounds like it could be crazy and it could be something they do. Um, the problem is JD Vance is still too closely connected to Donald Trump. I don't know that even, say, Brian Kemp wants to be that connected to anything with this administration, even if it is the Vance administration at that point, still too close to Donald Trump.
But if
Beyond
they
that,
promise him the presidency in short order after he takes the VP, he might do that.
true. I think you and I talked about this before. And I'll repeat it for those listening, because yeah, but to impeach and remove somebody, you need 2/3 of both of the Senate to get rid of somebody. You need a simple majority in the House, but 2/3 of the Senate.
Yeah, you're right.
So they put Brian Kemp in as VP. And let's say for whatever reason, you need 2/3 of both chambers to approve Brian Kemp. But let's say the Democrats go along with it because he's reasonable and they think he'll be a voice of reason in this administration and good for Vance. And let's say 3 months in to that, the Republicans decide, you know what, we're gonna remove Vance to put in Brian Kemp, and we have a semi-legitimate reason, but nothing overly scandalous, not nearly as bad as Donald Trump. I'm saying they don't have anything 100% solid. And the Democrats look at it and they go, shit, that makes Brian Kemp, who's a reasonable Republican and who might be likable on the national stage, president. Right. You know what? We'll save J.D. Vance. They could. That's entirely possible because J.D. Vance is a smoke show. He's a shit show. And it would be bad for the Republican Party necessarily to have it. It would be more beneficial to the Republicans to have Kemp up there. Now, if they have something legitimate, say they have J.D. Vance, taking a bribe. I don't know. I mean, it's the Republican Party. There's a lot of them that have gotten caught doing that. And they have him dead to rights. Now, Democrats would be hard-pressed to defend saving Vance when the evidence is clear. But if it's on something wimpy, like kind of like what they tried with Clinton and the potential injury that he had, and that was kind of a weak charge.
Yeah.
Maybe they save him. It's going to really depend on what they use against J.D. Vance to get rid of him, on what way the Democrats go.
But if I'm a Republican and I know what Donald Trump is doing is destroying the party and destroying his chances in 2026 and or 2028, if that's what I'm doing, I try to make that play, get Donald Trump out of there, get J.D. Vance in, put somebody else in there, and then immediately have that person who's president talk shit about everything that Trump and Vance did and say, I'm going to try to fix this thing. Immediately, you have somebody that has a different perception from the Republican Party in there, and he may have a couple of years to at least try to look like he's doing some good things. That's a stretch for Republicans. They don't behave like that. They don't think logically necessarily. So I doubt that would happen. But if it were me, that would be the only way I see saving the Republican Party before 2028.
Yeah, that's a pretty deep strategy for the Republican Party to use. They may try to go that route. And it may be enough, even just getting rid of Donald Trump, putting in J.D. Vance with somebody like a Brian Kemp as a running mate, a reasonable Republican, depending on how if J.D. Vance starts to change his rhetoric because of the influence of Brian Kemp, it might be enough to where JD Vance says, hey, I'm not running in 28. And then the VP, using Brian Kemp because he's the first reasonable Republican I can think of,
Right.
or reasonable sounding Republican. He goes,
Let's
he
put it
runs.
this way. Brian Kemp isn't reasonable. He just sucks less than everybody else. I think
That's
that's a better
true. That's true.
description.
That's true. But whoever it is, maybe Vance would then just maybe they don't remove Vance. Just Vance says, "Hey, I'm not going to run in 28, and whoever we pick as my VP, take the spotlight. We reverse some of the course on some of the Trump stuff. I'll take all the heat for it, and we set somebody else up for the future." That's another possible strategy. Either way, I don't know that Donald Trump makes it to 28. I think the Republicans turn on him or the Big Mac gets him. One of the two. And when it happens, I think the Republicans are already planning behind closed doors on how to move past Donald Trump, how to navigate in a world post Donald Trump. And it wouldn't surprise me if any of what we're talking about has at least been brought up by somebody, because, I mean, if two Midwestern guys who have never been in politics can come up with it, you got to tell me some of these career politicians have at least thought of it.
Well, yeah, but this concept is pretty deeply strategic and takes a certain amount of intelligence. Now, you have to understand, given that in the Republican Party, well, that may be a smart move for them. These are the same people that are talking about doing a discharge petition on their own to somehow get Donald Trump the Nobel Peace Prize. What in the fuck? I mean,
Yeah, I
I
heard about
know
that.
Congress has no control over it. Do they not understand how this fucking works? Or are they just doing it knowing it's stupid, thinking that Donald Trump will love them for it? I don't know.
It's again, it's like I've talked about several times. It's about the math. It's about that 35% of the Republican base. They know it's that they can't actually get the Nobel Prize. Now, I don't know which representative suggested it, and depending on who, they might be dumb enough to think they can. But I think what they're trying to do is throw out an olive branch to the base saying, well, we're trying to get Donald Trump that Nobel Prize. Vote for us because we're on his side. And the rest of the country looks at them like they're dumb. The rest of the world looks at them like they're dumb because there's nothing they can do. It is an independent commission, has nothing to do with the U.S. government. And in fact, I believe in the history of the Nobel Prize, campaigning to get it has never worked. Most people don't campaign to get it. They just do good things, get nominated by somebody, and then are surprised when they find out they're the winner.
Well, and the other thing that apparently Donald Trump didn't understand, he thought the situation with Israel and Hamas and cutting this peace deal, he fucked up twice there. First of all, that wasn't going to get him in because they made the decision in January. So he was well past the decision point. Secondly, Donald Trump is spouting off about this peace plan, and both sides have violated already 2, 3 days into this fucking plan. So we don't have peace in the Middle East. And I'll be surprised if Donald Trump has the wherewithal to get it done anyway. I mean, it's such a volatile area anyway, and better presidents have failed ultimately, or at least only delayed it for a little bit. I mean, even Joe Biden had peace in the Middle East for about 2 months, and then it didn't work after that. There is no president that can stop a war, as Donald Trump said. It's been raging on for 3,000 years, and now the war is over, and I did it. I knew he fucked up when he said that. That was just asking to look stupid.
Well, it reminded me, I don't remember what year it was, but it reminded me of George W. Bush when he declared victory in Iraq.
Mission completed.
Uh, Mission complete. Yeah. Reminded me of that because, like you said, they've already violated the damn thing. And this isn't the first time Donald Trump, this administration has said they have a ceasefire, they have a deal, and one side or the other has violated it almost immediately. Donald Trump fucks up repeatedly, but he is so desperate to spin the narrative. And now we can say, well, see, we had a peace deal. well, they fucked it up. It's on them. I wash my hands. It's, you know, he can try to say, not my problem anymore, and, you know, act like it's no big deal. He's a dumb fuck who doesn't understand anything on the world stage. He doesn't understand anything about world politics. And I swear, if he had three brain cells, he'd be dangerous. We're lucky he's only
Yeah.
got two.
Well, we're coming down toward the end, and one thing I wanted to bring up, this big No Kings protest that's coming up on Saturday. This one promises to be the biggest ever, and that's largely due to the crying and whining of the Democrats and the horrible things they've been doing in Congress and in this country. It's going to be huge. But I think it's interesting listening to all these Republicans, including Mike Johnson, coming out saying this hate protest. These people are all supporters of Hamas. They seem to be terrified of what's going on here. I think they realize that it's going to be the biggest one ever, and it's going to be impossible to divert or distract from it. And even the media is in a position now where they can't ignore it like they have in the past. It's going to be that big.
Oh, I think it's going to be huge. Now, I don't know what is going to go on here locally in my town. Um, Last time there was some people that showed up to do part of the protest. Uh, I heard maybe 50 to 100, something like that, which isn't a lot. But you add in all, you know, add in around the country, that's going to be huge. This thing is gonna be massive. I hope. I hope turnout is big. Remember, be peaceful. Uh, do not take the bait because I guarantee you, ICE agents and, you know, FBI, et cetera, are going to be there trying to egg things on. It wouldn't surprise me if far extreme groups are doing things like we hear about in other protest situations where they try to set things so it looks convenient, like, oh, hey, look, there's a convenient pile of bricks, things like that, you know, so that there's looting and there's rioting. Keep it peaceful. But Republicans are scared shitless because they know the tide is turning against them, and that if the momentum is this bad and if it continues to the midterms, that they're in for a figurative bloodbath.
Absolutely. Now, one thing people are saying, and I think you and I are on the same page with this. There are people that, and there's always people that do this for whatever reason. They believe anything Donald Trump says, and they will listen to any rumors that are said about Donald Trump. People are saying, well, they're going to have the No Kings protest, and it's going to be huge around the country, and Donald Trump is going to invoke the Insurrection Act all around the country. That's not going to happen. He doesn't have the wherewithal to do it. I mean, he might be able to pull it off in one or two cities, but he'll fuck it up because he always fucks it up. But when you've got maybe 20 million people walking the streets, try to do the Insurrection Act. Give it a shot. It ain't going to work.
Well, what was it? 11? I want to say, was it like 11 or 13 million last time
Yeah,
on his birthday? So yeah, 20 might be a conservative number because things have
right,
only gotten worse. They've only pissed people off that much more. And as long as the weather stays nice enough, people will be out. It's on a weekend, so people will be out. And I'm going to love seeing the videos from Republicans or MAGA creators. All these people out here, you know, protesting, they should be at their jobs. It's a motherfucking weekend. Most people are off,
right.
you know. Uh, but keep it peaceful. They're not going to pull the Insurrection Act. Um, and I think if he tries to invoke it, that might be the bridge too far for Republicans in Congress because they know
Absolutely.
how bad the media is be able to run that and how bad they're going to look in the process. And I think that's what they're afraid of.
Well, I think people are misunderstand the Insurrection Act too. They think they're going to put the military in the streets and they're going to be shooting people and taking over. And that's not really what the Insurrection Act is. It's basically sending in the military to uphold the laws and protect people like a police officer would. That's what the Insurrection Act is. It's not a full on takeover. That's not how it's supposed to be. And I can't imagine if that's what he tried to do that the military would go along with it.
Yeah, probably not. And as we've talked about, if they do try to send the military in or do unlawful things, those military generals that are receiving the direct orders, they may have to turn around and say no, because after he is gone, and Donald Trump will be gone at some point, because he will not, at the very latest, he will not be president come January 3rd or January 20th, 12 noon, 2029. Donald Trump will be gone as president. It doesn't matter if he tries to hold his breath and kick his legs and throw a temper tantrum on the White House floor. There will be a new president sworn and he'll be out of power. And these generals that have done any of these things that are definitely illegal may have to deal with any repercussions, including court-martialable offenses, if they followed through lawful orders just because Donald Trump said so. Because we know Donald Trump is too stupid to know what is a lawful or unlawful order.
Well, and Donald Trump made the mistake of speaking in front of 800 generals, and they now know what a dumbass and how criminal he is. So they're even less likely to go along with something that Donald Trump wants to do. I think people always want to worry about the worst, and the Insurrection Act over the entire country. It just couldn't happen. I mean, it couldn't happen in South Korea, for fuck's sake. It's not going to happen here.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen. I'm going to be enough pushback. And if he tries it, like I said, I could see Congress being the bridge too far.
Yeah.
Um, because especially if the protests are mostly peaceful and most news stations are going to have to start showing it because of how big it's going to be. I mean, they were talking about it kind of last time when it was only 11 to 13. Mainstream media was trying to kind of avoid it. I don't think that they're going to be able to avoid it this time. And they're going to have to discuss it. And I think Republicans are going to sit there and go, fuck, we got to do something if this gets out of hand. And they can't trust Donald Trump to reel it in. So they may have to reel in Donald Trump. And when they move to reel him in, he will burn the Republic down in the process.
Yeah, he will. He will. And, when it comes to the media and not reporting much on the last No Kings thing, it goes back to what you've said before. The tide is turning. And let's be honest, the media just jumps on the bandwagon that's most successful and is going to make them the most money. If they can generate more viewership by way of these protests and promoting these protests, they will. A lot of people think they're just all tied to Donald Trump, and that's true. Oligarchs own these media outlets, but at the same time, they are basically mercenaries. They will jump on board whatever is most popular and going to get the most views. When it becomes popular to kick Donald Trump's ass, they'll all be kicking his ass.
Yeah, exactly. Uh, these media groups, they don't care necessarily. They kind of care. The far right ones care about what side they're on, but most of them, they only care about their money in their pocketbook. That's why ABC brought back Jimmy Kimmel. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if Stephen Colbert ends up getting a contract extension between now and the actual end of his show. If they come out and say, you know what, we actually came to terms, we realized we fucked up, those kind of things. They're going to probably show this protest because it's going to be that massive around the country. And if they don't, there is going to be so many small time creators on TikTok handling it that are going to be showing the videos that are from there, that are from protesting. You know, it's going to be hard to ignore. And the fact that Republicans are scared shitless of it is a sign of how big it's going to be. And they know the real power resides with us, the people.
Yeah. We're going to wrap things up in a moment, but I have one last question for you that I know is concerning a lot of people, and I want to get your take on it. We found out that Dominion Voting Machine Company was sold to essentially a Republican oligarch, a Trump humper, if you will. People are terrified of that and about the next election. What's your take on that situation? It is troubling to hear that.
Well, that depends. Uh, the one thing I haven't heard yet, not because I'm not familiar with how the voting machines work, if any of the existing machines can function without internet access and without upgrades from Dominion or whatever this new company is, there's no problems. And some of them depending on where they're located, especially in liberal leaning areas, if they do require updates and stuff, they might just say fuck it and go with somebody else
Well,
because of
yeah,
who this guy is. And they may buy new equipment. And if this guy bricks, if they do require updates, he fucks with any of it, depending on how competent he is with what they're doing, because a lot of these people are incompetent. He may brick up the things they don't work anyway. And I saw one of his press releases said where he's going to be pushing to go with paper ballots anyway, which goes against what his voting machines do in the first place. So I'm not overly worried about it. And as far as if he does sell new machines, the areas he's going to sell are Republican leaning anyway, so Democrats probably wouldn't win there. It's not as big of a deal. We'll just have to wait and see how it all shakes out, and if it actually plays out the way people are scared of it. I'm overly concerned about it. I just think it's going to end up being something that handles itself.
it's interesting. I'd heard that in this sale of Dominion, part of the deal was they had to settle their lawsuits. Okay, they had to settle the
Mm-hmm.
lawsuits, um, and apparently they have, with one exception, because he's whining about it. Mike Lindell says they didn't settle my lawsuit. They didn't settle it. So Mike Lindell gets fucked over again, but he's still a big Trump supporter.
Yeah, and I couldn't be happier for him. That dumb fuck. Uh, I mean, and this is what happened. I mean, people who are supporting Donald Trump should look at Mike Lindell as a prime example of what happens to Trump supporters. They end up fucking themselves over time and time again because they cozied up to Donald Trump. And, Mike Lindell's no longer useful. He's not pumping millions of dollars into Donald Trump. Where's Donald Trump on all of this? Is he supporting Mike Lindell? Is he paying his defamation case? Is he getting him an attorney? No.
No,
He,
no.
he left him out high and dry because he was no longer useful. And that is exactly who Donald Trump is. He only cares about you when you're beneficial to him. And after that, you're done.
There's one other failure story here that I enjoy to report. Um, Alex Jones, of course, got sued by the parents of the victims of Sandy Hook. He lost to the tune of $1.4 billion. He appealed it, of course. He lost. He appealed it again and again. He appealed it to the Supreme Court, the last vestige of hope. And the Supreme Court says, yeah, we're not going to listen to this. So now Alex Jones has nowhere to go, and he's on the hook for $1.4 billion, and he don't have it.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, and the dumb thing is, I don't think he's ever recanted. I don't think he has ever admitted what he said was
No,
wrong,
no.
even after getting sued for 1.4 billion. And for those who don't know what he said, this is about Sandy Hook and the school shooting that happened there, what, in 2012?
Something like that.
He
Yeah.
has claimed that there were no children killed and that the parents were all paid actors to come in and it was all a big hoax. The thing is so ridiculous on its face that the fact that he has said it for so long is ridiculous. And because it's so ridiculous, that's why he got the big settlement. But as I say a lot when I talk about defamation, because that's what he lost on, the defense to defamation is the truth.
Right.
And if he was right and it was all paid actors, he couldn't prove it in court because that would be the truth. If he proved it, he wouldn't be on the hook for $1.5 billion or 1.4, whatever that number is. It's a ridiculous amount of money. He's going to go broke. He's not going to have access to his platform. Now, somebody else will platform him, and they're just dumb at that point.
Yeah.
But he's going to owe these families for the rest of his life. And not even all the families were a part of that lawsuit. There are other families that could still go after him for some of the money. And he's in for a world of hurt here. And he deserves every minute of it.
Absolutely. All right. We're going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. Eric, thank you very much. Let people know where they can find you.
Well, thanks for having me. As always, here's where you can find me. You can find me at Analytical Iowan on TikTok. That's where I make and post most of my content. Analytical Iowan over on YouTube. All of my TikToks, all of my TikTok lives all end up over on YouTube. I'm Analytical Iowan on Blue Sky, and I put the audio from all of my lives and all of my TikToks up over on Spotify. You can find me under Analytical Iowan on Spotify. And if you find me on any one of those places, I do have a link tree in my bio that will take you to any of the other places I have my content. So I encourage you to look for me in those spots.
Absolutely. If you haven't connected with Eric and watching what he's putting out, you're missing out. By all means, get on track and follow Eric. Those of you listening, I want to thank you for taking the time to do that. I hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.